Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Marketing Live for Thursday, January 25th, 2018. I'm Rob Zinkin, and I serve as Associate Vice President for Marketing at Indiana University. It's the new year, and for some of you, that may mean starting a new marketing role, or perhaps you have transitioned to a new marketing role over the past year. And today, we're going to break down how to strategically approach that transition, and especially looking at those beginning months, which are so important in setting the course for your success. First, though, a reminder that Marketing Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network. Our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. We hope that you'll be a part of today's broadcast with your comments and your questions, so feel free to chime in. You can participate in the discussion using the Higher Ed Live hashtag on Twitter. All of our episodes are free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com. Live with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast. It makes for a great listen on your work commute. And if you didn't catch Monday's episode about Facebook's newsfeed changes, be sure to catch that podcast as well. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a digital-first agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. And Higher Ed Live, if you've ever wondered, speaking of that, about prospective teams, what they're thinking when they receive or read or perhaps ignore your institution's recruitment marketing, the third study in the Myth-Busting series in partnership with NRCC UA is the first to focus on the complete enrollment marketing mix. That research is going to uncover the best marketing channels and communication preferences that have had the biggest influence on prospective teams' perceptions of your institution. So I encourage you to sign up now and receive early access to those research results and white paper that will be released this month. I've signed up. I'm eager to see it all as M. Stoner and our NRCC UA do great work with this research. Well, I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, Ken Sedge-Paul. Ken is Assistant Vice President, Marketing and Branding at Rochester Institute of Technology, a role that she began in 2017, and we're excited to hear all about her transition. Previously, Ken was a Big Ten colleague of mine, working up the road at Purdue University in marketing research. She's an active higher ed marketing voice, which I've always appreciated. So Ken, great to see you. I hope your 2018 is off to a great start.
It is, especially with being a guest on this show, which I listen to on my daily commute. So it's nice to be a guest on the show and not just a listener of the show.
Well, it's awesome to have you. And before we talk about your transition to RIT, I want to start with my favorite question to go a little bit beyond that brief bio that I shared and ask you to share something about your professional journey or your professional outlook, something that perhaps has had a lasting impact on you and your career.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've had decades of professional paths and various experiences when, in fact, motion sensor, hold on, sorry. I've been sitting still for too long. So yeah, but in reality, it's really been just absorbing a lot of knowledge in a very short time, and that's the part I enjoy the most is soaking everything in, soaking different aspects of marketing, whether it's brand management, market research, marketing plans, analytics. I mean, you name it, and I've done it. So I've enjoyed my entire journey, and really when someone asks, so what's your specialty in marketing? And I usually say, well, marketing is my specialty, and because I really like to have my fingers and my hands in a lot of areas that contribute to a marketing success. But there was this point in time when I was working, I think while I was working at Purdue, and I read a lot, and one of my favorite authors is Seth Godin. I'm sure you've heard of him, as many listeners and people probably have. And his book, Linchpin, was really something that stuck with me. And the whole premise of that book was how to be indispensable. And some might argue, and actually a lot of people will argue, no one is indispensable, that if you lose somebody or a talent or a skill, you replace it. Maybe they bring something new and fresh to the table, or they bring some of the same skills to the table. But he argues that you really have to make your work your art. You have to create and invent new ways of doing things. I think there was a quote in that I had up in I have up on my bulletin board is, your art is what you do when no one can tell you how exactly to do it. And that really stuck with me. And I really put that book on my shelf, not just as a reminder of what he said, but sometimes to just reference what it is to really build yourself up in an organization or in a career in a way that sticks, in a way that people will remember you if you were to move on, in a way that people will fight hard for keeping you if you decide to move on. So that book has had a lasting impact, and I do read most of these type of books. So my current book right now is called Mindset, and it's by a Stanford author, and she talks about how it is all about having a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset, people would believe that, you're just born with something. You're born with creativity. You're born with talent. You're born with this phenomenal IQ like Sheldon Cooper might have, or things like that. But the growth mindset argues that any and all of those can be developed. So that's really, I'm in the midst of that, but I like where it's going. It kind of shows that anything is possible if you put your mind to it, literally. So yeah, those have been really profound in terms of just what I've consumed in terms of information. And then there's always people and role models that have influence on you throughout your journey. And there's too many to list, but yeah, I've been very lucky with those type of role models in my life.
That's great. I shouldn't be surprised that you had an outstanding Seth Godin reference, which I'll throw another book recommendation out there, Footprints on the Moon, that I just read, and is short, quick, but very inspirational, and gets to the basics of asking with everything you do and every step along the way, essentially, who's it for and what's it for? So simple questions, but something that gets you thinking when you break that down to every piece. As you said, marketing consists of so many things.
Right.
So good stuff, really good stuff.
I will take that recommendation.
You're going to take us along for the ride with your journey and your transition from Purdue to RIT. So let's start with when exactly did you start at Rochester Institute of Technology?
So I started last summer. This May I'll be coming up on 1 year, which feels crazy because I feel like in some ways I feel like I've been here forever, just because of the amount of, again, information and projects and things that I've been involved with. But in some ways I'm like, has it already been a year? Or, and I'm like, I feel like it just started, and I can still play naive and say, oh, I didn't know that, and I can still have an excuse for the honeymoon period of 1 year or so while I try to learn the ropes. And I feel like people are always in that state where they are constantly finding something new, but I think I can use that for a few more months. But yeah, I was working full-time at Purdue, and around the same time, I also got my second master's degree, which was my MBA. And it just felt like, the stars were aligning, where it just felt like I should be taking the next professional step. And whether that was at Purdue or elsewhere, I was fairly open, and I heard about this opportunity and I applied, and lo and behold, I'm here. So I wasn't limited by geography or anything of that sort. It was really all about the job and the role and the potential of what that role could be and potential of what my team could be. And that's what excited me, and that's what brought me here.
So with that role, give us a sense, Ken, what your portfolio consists of there.
Sure. So it's a lot, but like, and that's what I like the most about it, is being able to have some level of understanding and input in various aspects of marketing. So we have a vice president, of course, and there are two arms under him. So there's a communication arm and there's a marketing arm, and I lead the marketing arm. But I work very closely with my communications counterpart because, you know, we do live in the age of integrated marketing communications, and we can't really separate the two. So everything that you might consider as marketing falls under my purview. So, and marketing in the strategic sense of marketing. So marketing managers who kind of liaise with colleges and talk through the strategic marketing plans, researchers and analysts and data scientists who really look at the numbers and the data and information that will help drive the strategy, brand management, whether it is, you know, just at, you know, figuring out who our IT is and what it should be positioned as, but as well as setting up our entire licensing structure and looking at how that might be fleshed out further. So there's a few things, and then I work very closely with what we call our spokes of marketing and communications, whether it is web or creative or video, and really help them think strategically through the process. So instituting things like, you know, creative briefs and things like that, that wasn't a part of the process before. I worked with the leaders of those groups to get them to a place where, you know, it's not just every project or job that comes through the door, but it is about what will make the most impact, and helping us and helping them think holistically about marketing a certain program or whatever the case might be.
Excellent. So with the topic today focusing on starting a new marketing leadership role, I want to go back to last year. So before you started in May of 2017 to when you accepted the position at RIT. And I'm sure that was both an exciting time, but also a stressful time. You're trying to wrap up one job and think about another, and you've got to figure out housing and moving and all those personal details. So what did you do to prepare for that first day? So thinking of the time between accepting the job and then starting, how did you approach that? Were there specific things that you did in order to help get you off to a good start, or as fast of a start as possible?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as part of the interview process, I did learn a lot about the institute as a whole, about RIT as a whole. So that was a learning process in and of itself to set me up for my day one on campus, but also understanding, you know, what does the RIT culture feel like, and how can I best prepare for a culture that is so collaborative? Because what I kept hearing and through my interviews and other discussions is, you know, RIT is very collaborative in terms of they form a lot of committees and councils for a variety of initiatives. So that was something I appreciated, but I also prepared for when is to learn about what initiatives are in place, what committees and councils are in place, and how I can best serve on those. Are there some that I personally can lead that don't exist? Things like that. So that was something that I thought about before I came. I also was thinking about just what the RIT brand was in my mind from before I got in too deep into RIT. I wanted to get a sense of that newbie perspective. You know, when you come on campus, what was that feeling like? Or when you when you went on the website or when you followed them on social media. Those were kind of things that I tried to do in that very short gap that I had between my move from Indiana to New York. And because I know that once you become a part of an institution, and I wasn't an alum or anything like that, so I was really an outsider for the most part. And once you become a part of an institution, that your perspective gets skewed really fast with the conversations you might have or people you might meet or the projects you work on. So that's what I did professionally speaking. Personally, I just wanted to embody the RIT spirit and the RIT brand, so I just would look for attire that was orange because I came from a very black and gold institution, and my entire wardrobe was like, oh, I can't find a pop of color anywhere. So it allowed me some time to have fun with, whether you call it shopping or whether you call it dress for success. I tell my husband it's dress for success, but he calls it spending money. But, just trying to embody just the spirit of RIT and show that I'm really ready to be a part of this institution in every sense of the word. So, yeah.
And I know you mentioned the interview process and campus visit, and a common interview question to a candidate, to a finalist is, what would you do? What would that plan be for your first 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, whatever that time period is? And so you have that as an interview question, but then what does that actually look like once you're there? So in your beginning months, what were some of the short list, those things that were most important for you, or things that you wanted to make sure happened in those beginning days?
Yeah, so that is a common interview question and a common interview answer. And it is a good answer because most people have good intention of doing that. And as did I, is really taking it in, taking all of it in before coming up with any ideas, suggestions, or plans on what we should be doing. So getting that historical perspective, getting some institutional knowledge from people that have been here, whether it's short-term or long-term, reading any materials that might be available, be it, view books that students get or alumni magazines that alumni get, and just trying to embrace what we've been doing and understanding why we've been doing. And what it actually ended up being was a little bit of that, but it was, everyone kept saying, oh, welcome, you starting on May 1st, you're going to be drinking from a fire hose. And that's because I think, so first day was orientation. So I think from day 2, I had to listen in on this major marketing presentation given by one of our partner agencies and absorb all of that. It was mainly research related. So research being a part of my portfolio, I had to absorb all of that, digest all of that, give my feedback, get some input from other stakeholders, which I was like, okay, who are these people? I don't even know their names. And then I think there was 2 days of Board of Trustees meeting. I didn't have to present, fortunately, but I did attend those. And there was one of probably our largest festival was that Saturday of that week, which is called Imagine RIT, where 30,000 people come, and I went and attended that. So I'm like, is this normal? Like, do people just come here on Saturdays and just hang out at RIT or not? But it just happened to be that my start date really coincided really well with some of these important things, so I could get a first-hand look and feel of what it is like to be at this festival that everyone at RIT is so proud of, or to sit in a room with RIT trustees and hear what their perspectives and what the president's perspective was, and listen to some real rich data right off the bat trying to tell us a little bit about the market in which RIT operates. So it was phenomenal in terms of just how much I learned. But yeah, the expectation of it maybe ramping up slowly but steadily, that wasn't quite met. It was more like, okay, boom, you're in there, you're in the field, and you're making things happen. And I loved it. I loved every part of it. I mean, when I came, my desk had already folders and binders ready for me to read. So I took a lot of that home because I realized I just wanted to be in my space and just take it in, and then use my time on campus just talking to people for the most part at the onset.
So it sounds like you were out and about very quickly, and I'm sure meeting lots of people right off the bat. So thinking back to those conversations, those initial meetings that you had with fellow administrators, with faculty, with staff, with other stakeholders, and going on a bit of a listening tour, as you said, taking it all in. What were you hoping to get out of those initial conversations? Did you have certain objectives as you met people that you really wanted to dig in and get something out of each conversation?
Yeah, and I actually did like a 3-month long listening tour just because it took that much time to get on people's calendars. You know, I was new, they weren't, so they had their daily jobs and then priorities and all these other meetings that they were part of. And then if you factor in summer with vacations and whatnot, so it took me a little bit to get around the block, if you will. But my boss, he was really nice, and he accompanied me on all of those visits to get a sense, even from his perspective. He's now been here almost 2 years, so for him to do a road show with me again and a listening tour with me again was beneficial to him. But he was helping people understand how I'll be working with them. So that was nice to have him tag along, or maybe I tagged along with him. And my goal was really just to listen, because I think RIT is probably the first institution, and I've heard this from other folks, so it's not just me, it's one of the first institutions or universities that I've been to or visited or worked at that has staff that has been working for decades. I mean, a lot of the staff have been, I mean, if you ask tenure of anyone here, I don't think anyone would say less than 15 or 20, barring a few folks, of course, where there were new positions created and things of that sort. So the institutional knowledge that I was able to gain just by talking to them was just phenomenal. I think it's probably helped more than reading anything about RIT on the website or any other materials I might have come across. So, and also finding out then in the natural course of the conversation, marketing as a subject would obviously come up, because, here we were, 2 marketers coming on this listening tour and understanding some of their pain points and why they might be doing what they were doing. So, you meet somebody and you might look them up before you go there, and you look up their department and look at what they've done, and you might think that, oh, they've not been really brand compliant. And actually on these listening tours, I found that it really wasn't that they were trying to be their own people or be their own department or unit. There was just no centralized direction and strategy that would guide them. And there was some, but it was a little bit buried. It wasn't steered by one central shop and things like that. So our division as a central marketing division is new. So when you don't have that central division, you do expect to see some fragmentation. So when you go on these listening tours, you really get to the bottom of why things are the way they are. And then you go back thinking, this is all solvable. We can make this work. And, we can't just take things at face value and look at a brochure or a web page or their social media and be like, okay, they're not they're not being strategic in their messaging or in their marketing, but it's really because there wasn't that centralized effort. So that was super helpful. That was helpful in addition to obviously learning about RIT, is learning what we can do to help them with their marketing.
And you mentioned, Ken, having staff there who are long tenured and people who've been at RIT for many years. So how did you go about approaching getting a sense of the team that you were coming into and those who were part of your team, their strengths, and how did you go about trying to assess them?
Yeah, so, I mean, when I was applying, that's when they were already talking about, beefing up our structure with some capabilities that may not have existed previously. There were no qualms from my side or on anyone else's side about the team that was already in place. So there were, the creative folks, the web folks, photography, videography, everyone super skilled, super talented, but they really operated before it was centralized in their own little silo, and they all had different reporting structures. So video would report up to somebody else, and design would report to somebody else, and writing, so that was, and news would report to somebody else. So I think the gaps that we as a division identified, and as did I echo those sentiments, was really, how can we create a holistic MarCom process and bridge some of the gaps and bring these groups together to function effectively and efficiently. There was, while we had a lot of, while we still have a lot of folks, doing things for our partners, there was no one really who steered our partners in a very strong, strategic, data-driven type of plan. So that was a gap that was identified almost immediately, having some sort of marketing intelligence to guide our efforts. Brand management was done at a smaller level, where it was more about, about how people think about branding, in generally speaking, logos, and making sure that those were compliant, but there was no larger understanding of who we are and what our key messages should be. So I think those were right off the bat things that were identified, and right now we are in the midst of creating and filling some of those gaps to the best of our abilities.
Excellent. And so we've covered, let's see, faculty, staff, colleagues, your team, and I want to ask about students as well, because you made some great points about ways that you tried to experience and absorb the RIT brand. And I think one of the challenges, perhaps, as someone climbs the ladder administratively, is they could possibly become more and more removed from students. And of course, students is the reason why we're all working in higher ed. So how, in your beginning months and even over the course of your first year, what did you do to try to connect with students or stay connected to students or get a sense of the experience that they were having as they lived and shaped the brand?
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point, a great point that, as you climb up the ladder, you probably get even more disconnected from students who are really the bread and butter and who are the reason why we are in these positions that we are. So, trying to engage them on an ongoing basis has been really important to me. So whether it is a work project or a passion project, I try to find a way to connect with students. So, anytime that we have to run some ideas and put them into action, I'll try to make some students, bring some students in the room, talk to them, connect with them, see what they have thinking, meet with the student government representative and see what his challenges might be as or not just his challenges, but the challenges of the student body as a whole. And he might be the speaker or the talking head for that. But I also have a passion project, which is really helping international students with career development. So in fact, last night I gave a talk to a lot of international students on the upcoming career fair and how they can put their best foot forward. And after that, I encourage them to meet with me one-on-one, so I can walk them through some of the nuances of finding a job as an international, because I hail from that background myself. I've been through, some bumpy roads along that ride. So I really wanted to share some of what I learned in my hopes to not just help them achieve their dreams, but also so that I can connect with them every step of the way. I try to find those opportunities, like I said, either through work or through some of these after work, but sort of still work related things that I can just help students in any area. And I'm working with some students on marketing projects. They have some capstone projects, and I gave them some ideas. So now not only are they helping us because we don't have the time to tackle some of these marketing needs, it is also allowing me to see the student for who they are, what they do, how hardworking they are, the work ethic they have. And it really solidifies the perception I have of RIT students and who they are. And I'm like, yes, all that data that we got on RIT students and who they are and how they conduct themselves, how they succeed as alumni and so forth is really true, because here is one great example of a capstone project that I gave to a student and who worked with me very closely, and look at the phenomenal work that he or she has done. So that's, it affirms some of, these are small data points, but it still gives you that personal sense of just what the student body is like. Yeah.
I love that idea of passion projects and that being a way to connect with students. So something I think everyone can ask or think through, or are you intentionally carving out time for those passion projects? So I think that's it's a great idea. So appreciate the experiences that you shared there. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have questions or comments for Ken, want to share your perspective, feel free to jump into the discussion and tweet us using the HigherEdLive hashtag. I also thought it was interesting, your conversations as you met with faculty and staff and the feedback and getting a sense that there was perhaps a lack of a central strategy for them to align to. So did you have any particular way as you had those conversations of helping colleagues look ahead with you and try to think about things in a new way, or things that you might bring to the table? So trying to help orient people towards the future and perhaps a new vision, while at the same time acknowledging the past, or being aware that not going in and saying, the way you're doing it or the way you've done it is awful, but acknowledging their approach, but also trying to move them or get them to think and orient towards a longer term future perspective vision that you wanted to bring.
Yeah, and that's important to do, but the way you do it is more important as well, especially in higher education, where it's not very top down. It's really, you have to have those conversations and then those discussions, and change begins at home. So the first thing that we wanted to do was really talk to our own team members on how we should be approaching any kind of marketing requests that come through our door, and asking some bigger questions than we've been asking. Instead of asking a size and specs and things like that, let's take a few steps back, quite a few steps back, and really try to ask the bigger question of what are they trying to achieve and what are they trying to say, and is this the best approach? And so that's there's some changes on that front that we brought about internally. There's still more work to be done as we staff up and shore up our capabilities in those areas. But as I get in touch with people and whether it's faculty, staff, whoever, I think one of the things that really helps anybody is data. And if you are able to back up just some of your suggestions with data, either if we don't have current data in primary research, then data from secondary sources or data from my past experience. I can talk about how at Purdue we tried something and this is how it panned out versus we tried, or trying to do A/B testing and saying, okay, we feel this way's, we're not sure which way is the better way. So let's try both and see what sticks. But for the most part, I think people are receptive to ideas and new thinking because they acknowledge that, for many of them, marketing is not even their primary role, right? So it's just one more thing they have to do because there is nobody else to do it for them. So most of them are happy for us to do some of that thinking for them and brainstorming and providing a plan. But at the same time, the thing that I try to convey is the institution and the university as a whole is investing a lot in just building up the RIT name, and that we should all dedicate our resources as well as be patient to see where that takes us, because really, I mean, a rising tide can lift all boats, and they acknowledge that, and they most of them acknowledge that RIT is the mothership, but because there hasn't been an RIT-wide strategy or a marketing plan, they have to struggle in their own individual way to get to the goals that they have set for themselves or have been set for them. So I think the hardest job, my most time-consuming job, I would say, is educating the educators and on marketing. And once we get to that point where we talk about all that we're trying to do for the university as a whole and how the trickle-down effect will really benefit them, and then we can all work together to not just elevate your program, even though you might be interested in your one program, but elevate all our programs, that you would really reap the most benefits, and economies of scale are probably the most helpful at that point in time. So those are the conversations. Some conversations like those might be harder than others, but it has been very refreshing to find that appetite and that hunger for someone to guide them, and all I want, and they're not offended, they are not afraid, and I'm not afraid to suggest some things. They are not afraid to adopt some of the suggestions. So we are a very sustainable campus. Let me put it out there. So while these motion sensor lights go off, so that's certainly something you're going to message around. But yeah, it's been a really good partnership so far, and with certain areas, I hope the partnership gets stronger because they are used to having their own people, their own designers and own writers and whatnot, and they just do their own thing, but we want to fold them into the larger picture, and they're open to that. So I think that's been a great start for me, just to be able to see and feel that trust that they put in me and our organization.
Well, it's fun to hear about your position there, because it does sound like you're in a great situation, but also in a position where you can really make a difference for the for the institution. And thinking back to the beginning of our conversation, and you used the phrase honeymoon or honeymoon period. And I guess we could debate how long that lasts for someone starting a new role. But I want to ask if there are any unique opportunities that so-called honeymoon period affords someone. And I ask that in the context of another book. Jerry Panis has a great book, The First 120 Days, and it's about college presidencies. And he emphasizes the point of being curious and being daring during this period, because it's a unique time that you have the freedom to do that. And it's more of a fundraising example that he alludes to, that it's a great time to make an ask and be bold because you're in that unique period. So with that in mind, was there anything, or has there been anything daring or bold that you've been able to do or think about because you're in that unique period of coming with a fresh lens and a new perspective that only someone who's starting a new role can bring?
Yeah, I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages to being in a new role. You can be daring and bold, but sometimes that can backfire. Not that it's happened to me, but you have to earn people's trust, and to come into a new leadership role and make these changes before you earn that trust, it can really go awry pretty fast. So I think that's been my take on any kind of bold changes. When it comes to our own organization, I was able to establish some credibility and trust earlier on than, say, with other areas on campus, just because it takes time to meet anybody and everybody that has a voice and has an opinion. So here we've taken some bold steps in our own organization. We are trying to rethink our org structure. We're trying to do some innovative things that weren't thought of before or ever, and so that's really allowing me to kind of say, I see this huge gap in this one area, and I think we should hire this agency, or we should get some people, and we should take this project on, because in the long term it's going to affect our image and our brand and so forth. On a more micro scale, I think I have taken advantage of this opportunity to ask for forgiveness later rather than ask for permission, and really been doing things the way that I know best how to, and then coming back and being like, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, like I didn't know this council existed, or that I had to go through these channels in order to put something out there, or whatever it might be. So in those situations, I mean, they're not as bold or as risky as one would think, but you got to start somewhere, and again, it's a balance of taking some small but steady risks and doing things and making things happen in a timely fashion, but also being mindful that once you come on board and people think of you a certain way, that image can last forever. So that trust building and that relationship management is so critical. So once you strike that balance, and you have to strike that balance very delicately, I think you can get to a good spot.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. So important, the point about earning trust. And as you reflect, Ken, on those beginning months, do any little things come to mind that perhaps made a difference for you, or had a bigger impact than you might have expected, something that marketing leaders may not immediately think of when it comes to thinking about a new position? And maybe another way to ask that would be, when you have your first hire, or someone new comes in as part of your team, something now that you're going to be sure is part of their orientation or their beginning months.
Yeah, I found, so there are various, so I have counterparts in different departments, as well as I have what I call the leaders of these various spokes, and I have my communications counterpart and so forth. And we meet and talk often on projects and things like that, but I have set up a monthly lunch or a coffee with each and every one of them, especially in the earlier months, because sometimes the conversation can get so project based or so work related that you don't get the time to get to know them beyond work. Who they are in real life, or what about their family, how long they've been at RIT. Well, I mean, most of them have been here forever, like I said, but what is their perspective, and just building that rapport and setting that up and touching base. And their offices are right down the hall, so it's not that I can't do that just by walking down the hallway. It is about just carving out that special time to really getting to know them, getting to know their work, getting to know their challenges, and for them to do the same with me if they have any questions for me outside of something. I think that I really enjoyed my lunch and coffee conversations, because it's kind of broken the day out for me too a little bit. When you're always always answering emails, always in meetings, it kind of gives a nice reprieve from some of that. The other thing I would say was I really tried to do a lot of things that were RIT related, but not directly related to my job. So, whether it is meeting with our students, like I said, I do that quite often after work hours, and either serve as a mentor or things like that. I, try to go to, I've never been to a hockey game, so went to some of those to get a sense of the school spirit. And what else? The Imagine RIT Festival, like I mentioned already, and doing things that really make you understand the full culture, the full landscape of the institution, because you're meeting with a lot of people and doing a lot of things marketing related, but sometimes it's nice to just even go to another building where you might not have colleagues, immediate colleagues, but they might be in a different department, and have a coffee in that building and just observe and watch and learn, and taking my laptop with me so I can it's not just I'm just sitting and and watching, but actually getting stuff done too. So I think just kind of soak, again, I use the word soaking it in a lot, but it is so vital to that experience and to building that experience of being in a place that offers so much, but you don't have a full sense of what all it offers without you doing some of these things proactively. So that's really what I would do, and I would, if I were to have a hire, I would give them, I mean, I have some hires right now, but they're more internal transfers. But if I were to have a new hire, I would tell them to, while yes, there are these things that you need to tackle because we're always short of resources, take your time to really understand this place. And however that transpires for you, it might be different for different people.
Well, Ken, this has been great. Really appreciate your willingness to share your experiences and your insights. I wish you continued success in your career and at RIT. So thanks again, and all the best to you.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this conversation, and always pleasure talking to you, Rob.
Well, as always, thank you to mStoner, which produces Marketing Live and makes Marketing Live possible. Be sure, again, to get reminders about this and other episodes by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter. You can browse the video archives at higheredlive.com or subscribe to the podcast. I'm Rob Zinkin. Thanks again for tuning in to Marketing Live on the Higher Ed Live Network.